Greetings, historians, and welcome back to House of Ideas Historian. Last week, I went over my top 5 favorite villains. If you haven't watched that yet, go ahead and watch that right now. Because, spoiler alert, my number 1 favorite villain is Ultron. So, I wanted to give a little bit more time, get a little bit more in depth about this character that I just freaking love. So, let's get into it. Here is the best Marvel villain out there. Ultron. Ultron is one of, if not the greatest Avengers villains. I mentioned last week that his first appearance was in Avengers 54 and 55 back in July and August of 1968. We see him revealed in the last page of Avengers number 54, but it wouldn't be until page 11 of Avengers number 55 till we finally see his name, Ultron 5. These two books tell the stories of one of my favorite villain groups in the early years of Marvel, the Masters of Evil. This being the second iteration of the team after the first Masters of Evil was defeated by the Avengers in Avengers number 15 and 16 in 1965. This team consisting of Black Knight Dane Whitman, the Radioactive Man, the Melter, the Whirlwind,
the Claw,
and it was led by the Crimson Cowl, who was revealed to be Jarvis. No, that was just a bamboozle. It was actually Ultron. This might be Ultron's first appearance, but isn't his true origin. His true origin we wouldn't see until Avengers number 58 in November of 1968. Here we learn through a series of flashbacks that Ultron was created by none other than Hank Pym when he was testing with artificial intelligence. Hank Pym based Ultron on his own brain patterns. Because of this, Ultron considers Hank to be his father. One of the best parts of Ultron is his family. Ultron is obsessed with the concept of family, which I find to be quite fascinating. We see in his infancy of Ultron 1 that he calls Hank Pym his daddy, but then very quickly aging and calls him father. This obsession with Hank Pym and Hank's family continues all the way through Ultron's existence. For a being whose entire existence, his entire destiny, his entire drive is to destroy the Avengers and all of humanity, I find it amazing that a concept of a family and family unit is so important to Ultron. So important that he goes out of his way to create said family. We see his very first creation as his son, that of the Vision, making his very first appearance in Avengers number 57, all the way back in 1968. Fashioned with the brain patterns of the late Simon Williams and the body of the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond, Vision is Ultron's vision of the future and his first son. But he isn't his only creation. Ultron's family tree is a bit convoluted, because, thank you comic books. But let's stick to the basics. Ultron had 2 wives. The first being Jocasta, who we met in Avengers number 162, based off the brain patterns of Janet Van Dyne, who was Hank Pym's wife. Ultimately, Jocasta turned against Ultron in favor to help the Avengers, very similar to that of Vision. His next wife is that of Alchema, whose brain patterns are based off of Bobby Morris, the Mockingbird, who is Hawkeye's wife. Alchema is very ruthless, very different than Jocasta. In fact, she's even different than Ultron. Ultron wanting to end humanity by way of mass extinction. Alchema felt like that was not personal enough, choosing instead to kill every single person face to face, because it is a more personal way of going. Finally, years later, Ultron created a new son as a thank you to Marinella Mancha for rebuilding his body. This child's name is Victor Mancha, who eventually joins the Runaways and then the Avengers AI. Ultron has been around for a long time, so his list of abilities, powers, and weapons is quite extensive. But ultimately, it boils down to one thing that makes him such a menace to Earth's mightiest heroes. It's his inability to truly ever die. Even if the Avengers take out Ultron's body, even if the Avengers defeat him in battle, there will always be another Ultron. We can never really know if he has been defeated. One thing that I really like about the MCU's adaptation of Ultron, portrayed by James Spader, is that we constantly see him improving himself and getting better. Whether it was his search for the vibranium or the fact that he was constantly multiplying. Every time we saw him, he got bigger and bulkier. Even so much so that Tony made a joke asking if he's been juicing. That was amazing, because this is exactly how Ultron has been going through the years and years, always building himself up from Avengers 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to Ultimate to whatever it is. But even more than that, we saw how Ultron was in the internet. His brain was connected to every bit of him. Whenever we thought this is the main Ultron, there was something else being built somewhere else.
The vibranium's getting away.
And you're not going anywhere.
Of course not. I'm already there. You'll catch on. But first, you might need to catch Dr. Banner.
In the final fight scene, we see Ultron control an entire army of his copies, and every single one of those copies had Ultron's brain in it. It was perfect and exactly shows how Ultron can never really be defeated. Because how do you know that you defeated a computer program? How do you know you defeated something that is in every inch of the internet, every inch of computer systems all over the galaxy? You just cannot know. That is what makes Ultron amazing and why he keeps coming back. A lot of the old school villains have been phased out of Marvel these days. When was the last time that you saw the Whirlwind? In fact, when was the last time you saw the Masters of Evil really be a threat? But Ultron is a different story. He keeps coming back, and he keeps coming back a little bit better and a little bit different. And you cannot defeat him exactly the same way each time. Personally, I hope that this continues, because his consistent presence within the Marvel Universe is one of my favorites, and I would love to see more Ultron in the years to come. As I'm doing this and further series like this, I want to give tips on how to continue your reading to get a better feel for this character. Whether you want to rewatch Avengers Age of Ultron or you just want to know the character a little bit better, I want to give source material so you know what to read, so you get a good feel for the character. This one isn't an easy one because there is so much Ultron in the Avengers history. So here are my thoughts on what I think you can get a good feel for Ultron. And as I always say, I love the origins, so it's super important to me that we go all the way back and get those first appearances. So I'm gonna say you need to read Avengers number 54 and number 55. They may not really have the most to do with Ultron because he's with the Masters of Evil, but it is his first appearance. But then we definitely want to read Avengers number 57 and 58. First off, Avengers number 57 is the first appearance of the Vision, so that's a great read, but we also get the origin, the true origin of Ultron. You get to see Ultron 1 in his infancy. You get to see the first words of daddy and father. I would also urge you to read Avengers number 66, 67, and 68. This is where we see Ultron adapt for the very first time, now calling himself Ultron 6 with an adamantium body. Fun fact, this is actually the very first appearance of this very famous metal in all of Marvel. Go Ultron! Ultron also plays a very heavy role in the Annihilation Conquest crossover, this time leading the Phalanx. This is actually a book I have not read myself, not knowing a whole lot when it comes to Avengers space, but I do know Ultron's in it, so I probably should read it. But lastly, you were probably expecting this, but there's the Age of Ultron, an entire crossover event dedicated to this mechanical menace. Now, it didn't hit my top 5, but that does not mean it's a bad event by any means. We get to see some amazing shots of some really cool alternate futures. We get to see an Earth controlled by Ultron under his thumb. But we also get to see some time travel shenanigans when Invisible Woman and Wolverine go back into the past to try to stop Ultron from ever happening. It's really cool to see this new twist on the origin story of Ultron that we saw in Avengers number 58. And it looks like we're out of time again! Man, I could talk about Ultron all day long, but I'm gonna end it here. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Is there something I missed? Something that you want to know more about Ultron? Is there a specific iteration you want to see more about? Or maybe just a different story that you could read? As always, hit me up. There's Instagram, Facebook, comments below. Hit me up on the email. Freaking write it in the sky smoke signals. I want to hear from you. I love this character. I've got him inscribed on my skin forever just to show the world. So, what do you guys think? Is there another villain or hero or character you want to know more about? Kind of like I talked about Taskmaster a month ago or Ultron now? As always, let me know. Comments, Instagram, Facebook. Excelsior, true believers. Till next time.